back in the building, Brooklyn. We back on the map. I said Brooklyn, I know, but it's Chicago. This is the CHGO Sky Show, presented by CHGO Sports, a division of the All-City Sports Net, and presented by CD1 Price Cleaners. Visit chgo.cd1, that's chgo.cdone.com. And once online, you can pick from an in-store coupon or online pickup and delivery coupon options. For all your good dry cleaning needs, check out CD1 Price Cleaners. I'm Chris Pennant, your favorite Jeopardy winner's favorite Jeopardy winner, and he's Stephen Garner, all-state in 2 states, literally, because your man's doing work in Illinois and Arizona, and he is QB1 and your point guard of the future. On with Stephen Nicholas today on the Wheels of Steel, and we're talking Chicago Sky opening night. Stephen, how you feeling, baby?
Man, feeling blessed. Happy to see another opening day that's getting more and more attention as the years pass by. It's chapter 28 now for the W, so I feel like this is maybe the most steam we've seen in terms of anticipation and just the general excitement about everything to come from a league-wide perspective. And it feels like this is one of the most exciting Chicago Sky seasons as well, even with the uncertainty surrounding things.
That's true. That is a very, very clinical way to put on it. But we got to hype up, man. Come on. It's opening night.
Oh, for sure.
We out here, man. I see you came
sure.
out with the gold ropes. Man, fresh right here. Got the beard lined up. You know what I'm saying? Come on now. We out here.
You got to come correct. You got to come correct for the season, baby. Let's get it.
No doubt. And first things first, we want to thank everybody who made our draft night show possible. Of course, we're talking about everybody who was on with us at the CHGO studios and live on headquarters on location with Steven. But every single one of y'all who tuned in, all of our guests who came on with us, Mark Schindler, Calvin Wetzel, Danny Barlabi, and Callie Lawson-Freeman, Lawrence in the studio, and every single person who jumped on in the comments to talk about what their thoughts were, because that was a first for us. It was a big step for us in the show, and you can be sure you're going to see content like that all season long, and as long as this show is on the air. So thank you to everybody who made that possible. We appreciate it.
Yes, we do. And while you're here, go ahead and give us a thumbs up for this particular video as we get things rolling.
All right, man. It's opening night, and we had 2 games of preseason, saw final cuts Monday with saying goodbye to Taya Reimer and kind of surprised of cutting Brendan Maxwell. And the Sky roster is down to 12. I was surprised, I think, along with a lot of people, at the Brendan Maxwell decision. But on the flip side, it means that Kaiser Gondrzik is on the roster coming out of training camp with the team that originally drafted her. That means that Kennedy Carter's in the fold. It's a really interesting roster, not to put too blunt a point on it. But what did you see from those 2 games in preseason that made Kaiser a finalist?
Well, first, in a non-basketball sense, I want to congratulate Kaiser because she went through some, let's just say, adversity coming into the season. She had a different type of motivation than she had prior to, and it feels like that, in addition to just her general evolving maturity and evolving skill, integrated with the professional level, has all seen an uptick. And I think she pretty much elaborated it as well as possible, and just saying that she feels like she's her best self right now. And I'm really happy for her, and I'm kind of proud of her, like she's a big sister in a sense, just because seeing people go through adversity and come out better is not easy. There's a lot of inner working that has to go on. There's a lot of patience. There's a lot of grace that has to be given to one's self, and there's just so many different things that go on through that make it hard to focus on anything external. So the fact that she was able to come into training camp and knock things out of the park and really find a niche in everything that the Sky are trying to establish going forward, it's a blessing. So congratulations to you, Kaiser. But additionally, speaking from that, I think the shooting is what stands out most. She knocked down a handful of threes in the second game, and this is a team that I've talked about since the roster was beginning to be put together, that shooting and spacing are two things that are of great concern for me. I think there are ways they can go about mitigating that weakness, but I do think it is going to be a weakness that they're going to have to show opponents that they can flip into a strength or something that is going to garner more respect before they give it to them as a template defensively. I think that could lead to some tough sledding and stretches in terms of their operation in the half court based off of the type of players that they'll be having in their main rotation. But I do think that Kaiser is the type of player that could potentially help them kind of get over that speed bump in a sense in terms of their process. So that's probably the biggest thing that sticks out to me for Kaiser. And I think also the other thing being just the general tempo and cadence of play. I think that's something that Teresa Weatherspoon wants to do, getting up and down the floor, and she certainly helps with that as well. I'm curious, what do you see from Kaiser, and what are your kind of just general thoughts about her making the final cuts and everything?
I think some of it was need-based. With the injury to Brenna Maxwell, they already had Camila Cardoso on the shelf for a couple of, at least a month, possibly more. And Brenna got injured in that after the first game in Minnesota. And it was just unfortunate timing. We talked about on the draft show that a lot of second-round picks don't stick on rosters. And I didn't necessarily think it was going to be because of an injury, but carrying a player, even a player that does what Brenna can do, which is shoot and space the floor, having her on a long-term injury basis wouldn't necessarily be helpful. And it enables, I think it gives the Sky an extra space for another hardship contract if they need it. So I liked what Kaiser did, especially in that game against New York. She was able to get a couple of open threes, and I think even a couple of contested shots that fell down. And she's a floor spacer. She is somebody that can play in transition. And I think it gives them some more options in the backcourt, which it's not like they have limited options, but as long as they can keep throwing different looks out there with their backcourt options, I think that's something that Teresa Weatherspoon and her coaching staff are going to try to lean on, especially to make up for what is going to be taking some time to develop their half-court offensive identity and a bit of a loss in the front court, again, with the loss of Camila Cardoso being out and a lack of size after Elizabeth Williams. It's going to be, I want to see how they're going to manage that, because it's going to be a bit evident against New York, in some ways against Connecticut in terms of maybe not height but size, and Dallas with Tierra McCallum. But exactly like you said, Kaiser's dealt with adversity, to put it lightly, and in the worst possible sense. She's come out as the best you can. It was evident in her face in media day. She talked about just feeling blessed and letting that spirit shine to everybody that she sees. And it's translated to the basketball court. Even in what was a topsy-turvy draft year anyway, she took the kind of circuitous route that we saw from a player like Rebecca Gardner, but was able to get back to the W in a shorter amount of time and land on a roster. It remains to be seen if she'll stick for the entire season, but I'm looking forward to seeing Kaiser Gondrik's name show up in the scorebook with 3.6 points, getting numbers on the stat sheet, man. It's simple as that.
Yep, and you can tell that she has a level of wisdom about her, in addition to leadership. And again, when you have so much newness around the team, having wrenches sprinkled throughout your roster like Kaiser, and to a different extent like Isabel Harrison, obviously Elizabeth Williams, I think you having those veteran pieces that exude leadership and that really step forth into leadership naturally without having to be inspired to do so, it all just accentuates and really just adds to everything that Teresa Witherspoon does as an individual, as a coach, as a woman leading a group of women, and just generally speaking, the leader of any capacity of a team. I think all those things add up. You can't get to the ultimate thing that we've seen, which is this collective level of buy-in that's going to be a weapon for this team, without these steps being taken by these pieces that are sprinkled throughout the rotation for this team. And I think all things considered, this is as good as this roster can possibly be, given all of the things that Jeff Pagliuca had to do in terms of maneuvers prior to the draft to compile draft picks to then obviously use put this team in a space to where they're not just looking solid on paper, but they're also pulling belief out of supporters. And, we saw the energy at Media Day. We also saw the energy at the preseason game, which was only open to season ticket holders. And to see, how loud and how engaged the crowd was with every single play. That was a game that they were blowing the New York Liberty out for about 2.5 quarters. But to see the energy and the engagement level from the fans be so high for a game that didn't count record-wise, it says a lot about the foundation that everybody, in terms of who all has been added to this new rendition of the team, is putting in place.
Yeah, Jeff talked about that, right? I know I asked him that question in Media Day, like, did he get any feedback from the people in attendance? And he was, I liked the response from him because you could tell how much he's grown into this job. He was clinical about his response, saying, that the game went about as best we could hope for. And when you have a game like that, of course, you're going to get the feedback from the people saying, yeah, it was a great game because, we won by 48. But he liked the fact that they were able to get everybody in. He liked what the team showed in terms of energy and the way that they executed, I think, defensively, specifically. And he was reserved about his opinions. Like, they have a long way to go. It's a long season. And it was just preseason. But his attitude about both of those games was fairly telling in terms of what he believes, and I think what Teresa Weatherspoon and the coaching staff believe that they've got in the team. Real quick, I did want to bring up a quote from our man Ian Carter-Hamilton on Brenna Maxwell, talking about the fact that she could come back to the team later this season. One thing to note on this, if the Sky do eventually bring Maxwell back when she's healthy, the cut and re-sign means that they forfeit the future years of team control. So she'll be a free agent in the offseason. She'd be an unrestricted free agent. So for anybody who's listening to the show, watching the show, who is not as versed in WNBA, how the CBA works, and I think this would be the same in the NBA, but you see more players getting cut in training camp than you do in other leagues. So Brenna Maxwell would be, she could come back later this season. It's possible that the Sky do have designs on that. But knowing what Jeff also said and what people talked about at Media Day, she came in saying she was going to outwork everybody and had that attitude. And the only thing that really stopped her was being, unable to do work on the floor. So I wouldn't be surprised if a team that needs shooting later in the season, which could be at Dallas, which could even be one of the lower tier teams like Los Angeles or Washington, take a flyer on Maxwell as the season goes on. Going into some more of those Media Day combos, we got a lot of interesting stuff. Steven, you had some great questions, especially once we got to the middle of things, I think, for Dana Evans and Marina Mabry. I did pull a nice quote from Dana that I know we've gotten the hopper, as we say, what up to Region Rev out there, and Gary holding it down, and Alejandro De Jesus, who says, what's up? I want to bring up that quote from Dana, but what did you see, I think, in terms of what players said about what they were bringing to that's different on the floor, whether it's leadership or whether it's things that they've added to their bag?
Yeah, the first thing in terms of that particular framing of a question is Dana continuing to evolve into a leadership role, ascending from one of the kind of end of the rotation players on the championship team, slowly ascending upwards towards ultimately where she is now. And, I just kind of asked her, what is your assessment of where you are, whether that be skill-wise or intangibles, that you plan to hone in on going into the season? And as you can see on the quote there, I think the first thing she said is probably maybe the biggest thing, saying that she wanted to be an extension of the coach. And you can't do that if you're not in sync with whoever it is that your head coach is. And I would say, after all of the things I heard from Teresa on Dana and Dana on Teresa, they're very much in lockstep with one another. And again, if you're going to be an extension in any capacity of that coach, it's got to come from the point guard position, for one, because the point guard is naturally the person that's initiating most of the offense. Also, with the head coach that has a background being a point guard, the bar is going to be a little bit higher. There's going to be a little bit more detail in terms of what catches her eye, how she's going to critique things. and how she's going to look at the game and the conversations that they're going to have. So I think that is, as a foundation, something that's, I mean, it's as invaluable as anything. You will hope that that connection is as in depth as any other. And I think they're there. Like I said, I think they're in lockstep. And Dana has one hell of an opportunity on her hands this season in usage, in the context, shape shifting around team wise, and how she's being featured within all of that. How she's being implored to be herself even more so than maybe she was in seasons past. I think she has the utmost green light from Teresa to just be herself, as long as she does so, like Teresa mentioned, in being a conductor, conducting the orchestra, setting the table first, and then going to get your own afterwards in the true essence of a point guard.
Yeah, there was actually a great quote from Teresa Weatherspoon later in Media Day about exactly that, conducting the offense. And she said that Dana has to facilitate first, conduct the show first. And you saw that last night against New York. She was incredible. She was unpredictable. I liked that particular word for Dana's game, because one of us asked about, what she was able to develop overseas with Besiktas, kind of getting the keys to run the show over there. And while we were able to see it overseas, during the wintertime, I think there was an improvement in even her playmaking part of the game as well, being able to work with an oversized big in Lee Uri before the trade. And then with, I believe, Michaela was with Ormanspor, apologize. But just Dana's ability to play make as well as get shots off the dribble. You talked ad nauseum about her ability to drive to the lane and put pressure on the defense and open up looks for her teammates that way. But I know she talked about getting Diamond and Kennedy going downhill, both in the half court and in transition, because they're so explosive that way. She said specifically getting Marina open off stagger screens so that she can get shots that way. And we didn't see every bit of that against New York, but we saw it on display when Dana was on the court. And there's something you said, Stephen, that I want to get back to right after this break about the differences in play with her and Lindsay Allen that can give the Sky a good change of pace against teams depending on how they utilize those two guards. This is, of course, the CHGO Sky Show, and as we said at the top, we're presented by CD1 Price Cleaners. Low prices, simple, transparent service with a quick turnaround. It's graduation season's kind of past, but it's still springtime when you want to get out there and look fresh, look sharp. And you can't look sharp without getting your clothes pressed and fresh. And the best place to do that is CD1 Price Cleaners. Save over 30% on your dry cleaning bill than you would if you used your local dry cleaner, and you're going to have your order ready the same day or the next day rather than in 2 to 4 days like those local shops. As well, they charge one low price for any garment, including sports jerseys. So if my man wants to get his D-Wade clean, if he wants to get the Carolina Jordan clean, if he wants to get the Chris Paul jersey looking sharp for the summertime, CD1 Price Cleaners is where you're going for that. And it's always going to be the same price, low price, every time, and they're not going to charge you anything different. They do dry cleaning. They will wash and fold your laundry. If you don't know how to do your laundry, if your parents for some reason did not teach you how to clean your clothes when you went to college, they'll do that for you. They'll wash your blankets. They'll wash your comforters. They'll tailor your shirts. If you're getting a little bit wide in the waist like I am, they will let your shirts out. They will clean your leather jackets and your area rugs that you have at home, making your living room look like one of those pictures in the magazines. They'll clean those too. So visit chgo.cd1, that's chgo.cdone.com. And once you're online there, you can pick from an in-store coupon or an online pickup or delivery coupon option. CD1 Price Cleaners, proud sponsor of the show. And as well, we got to talk about Coors Light. Since the season's starting, I've been saying it all spring long. Once that weather gets hot and once you're on the patio, whether you're on the back, whether you have the sky on in your living room and you're feeling that Chicago sun come in the windows, nothing better than to reach for an ice cold Coors Light. You know it's cold when the mountains are blue and you see that silver bullet train with the smoke coming out and LL Cool J leaning out the conductor's window telling you that it's a cold beer coming straight to the grill. There's plenty of chances in life to make things better, so choose chill. Marina Mabry's cooling out this year. She's not drinking Coors Light, but I'm choosing the same chill that Marina is, and that's why I'm reaching for Coors Light. and whether I'm going to be out at Whiskey Girl up north watching the game with a few friends, whether I'm going to be at Wintrust off the clock, of course, or whether I'm going to be at home, Coors Light is what I'm choosing. Cold lager, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. It's mountain cold refreshment. So make the most out of the times you choose to chill by choosing Coors Light. Get it delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Dunk. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Back to Dana. I like I said, I like what she was able to compile overseas, and I like the fact that she is such an energetic player on both ends of the floor. But Lindsay Allen is a bit more of the like facilitate head up I really thought like an old school type of point guard, like bringing the ball up the floor, calling the play out, like not upright and stiff. But when I think of guys like when I think of players like Sue Bird straight up, Penny Taylor, Tisha Penichero, and even Courtney Vandersloot, that's the type of feeling I get from Lindsay Allen. And that's a different point guard than Dana Evans. So I think those two could offer a real nice change of pace, depending on how they're used over a 40-minute game.
Yep, it is a positive contrast. It's like fire and ice. And I think it's exactly what this team needs, because they have so many different pieces around them that can benefit differently from a different type of initiation of offense, that it all just makes, like I said, for like positive contrast. And additionally, in the second game and even in the first game against Minnesota, we saw them featured in lineups together, and how that particular pairing in terms of a tandem, it allows for Dana to spend time off the ball. And I think that's something that helps unlock a different level of skill, because now with Dana's speed, she can get downhill off of movement with her feet and body already in motion versus having to self-create and generate that for herself. We saw multiple times in that game against the New York Liberty where, especially in the second half, when she was paired with Lindsay, she was the one that was coming off of those off-ball actions, whether that be Iverson screens, cutting across the lane from one sideline to the other, or starting from the baseline like somebody like Marina Mabry or Kennedy Carter would. And she's the one that's now flowing off of those stagger screens or stagger entry variations that this team is showing that they like to get into to start their offense. You get Dana in movement, and she knocked down a couple of shots off of that. That hits differently when she can become a moving target without the ball versus always having the ball in her hands already. And I think you're already starting to see the light bulb go off in terms of a creative process for her when she does get the ball, whether she's initiating or working off of it. And I think that's Lindsay Allen being able to, like I said, just help to unlock different dynamics of her game. And I think that in addition to all of that, just the level of experience and the general level of the veteran know-how that she can share with Dana is only going to help to catapult Dana's game forward, going into everything that's to come in terms of opportunity for her and usage this upcoming season. Just think about the crop of point guards that Dana Evans has had the opportunity to listen to and to just kind of observe and to battle with in terms of sharpening her sword over her career so far. Comes into the league, immediately learning from, at that time, one of the two best point guards, if not the best point guard in the W, and Courtney Vandersloot. Spends 3 seasons with Sloot, and then transitions from Sloot to Courtney Williams, another player, different type of point guard, but nonetheless a lead guard that has a level of experience that you can't necessarily replicate. And it's something that can't work against everything that Dana desires to do. And now you transition into this season, you go from Courtney Vandersloot, a different type of point guard, different type of guard than Courtney Williams is. And Courtney Williams, different type of guard on the court and off the court, leadership-wise and intangible-wise and skill-wise and mindset-wise than Lindsay Allen is. That's 3 completely different types of guards that she's been able to spend time on a consistent basis with. And that's going to naturally help to just expedite the processing of how to do this, how to do that in this certain scenario, how to carry yourself, how to be a leader, and just generally how to be a great basketball player. I think Dana's set up as well as she possibly could off of that alone, and we're going to see her reap the benefits of that this upcoming season.
Yeah, and it's also really noteworthy that out of the players who were in the starting rotation last year, and of the 3 players who returned who started any games for the Sky, 2 are Elizabeth Williams and Marina Mabry, who started 40 and 39 games respectively. And then there's Dana Evans, who got 1 start, but played in the majority of games last year. So that's it's one of the small bits of continuity that this team and regime has. But also, just like you said, Dana has been able to kind of absorb the skills and learn from so many of those guards, both that she's played with and played against, and hone her talents that way amidst a difficult situation. And I think it's very telling that Dana has come out with a very balanced attitude towards all that. Like having that kind of transition turnover, outcomes to a season where you win a championship, then you get about that close to going back to the finals and collapse badly. And then the next season where just everything goes haywire to the point where, you've got the interim coach, you've got your lead guard has never played that spot before, but is, really filling in well, but just everything going weird. I think Dana's talk at media day, just of, not necessarily reflecting, but living in the present, means that we're going to get the full Dana Evans this year. She's not going to be concerned or slumping if she has a difficult shooting night. She might come one night and shoot 4 for 15. The next night, she could shoot 8 for 12. That's with 6 or 7 assists. That's going to be really interesting to see, because this is Dana's job. This is Dana's job, where people were clamoring for it for years now. This is Dana Evans' job. She is the lead point guard for this team. And so I think the most interesting part is what I mentioned, like how is the team going to utilize her and Lindsay Allen together, because they're going to be able to run the team in different ways, but it's going to do a lot for what their offense is going to look like. And that's a good way to lead us into our expectations and predictions for the season. Oh, go ahead, man. I want to stop.
Yeah, for sure. I did have 2 more quick things on Dana. So she has like a quote that she goes to often in terms of when people try to project forward or look backward on things that's happened over her career. And she always brings things back to focus with saying that she loves to be where her feet are. And I think you talked about it being present. That's quite literally the essence of what she's saying. And she says that that's where most of her growth has come from the last couple of seasons, just processing and understanding to just be where your feet are, address the moment in the now, and allow for that to then springboard you forward. I think that's important. It shows a level of maturity that she's established over the last couple of seasons. And then the other big thing for Dana, if anybody knows her in terms of obviously observing her in conversations and on the court, she's never been one to bash away from being brutally honest. And she said she made sure to note that she played no defense while she was overseas in this most recent overseas stint for her with Besiktas. Yeah, she was like, y'all, I'm not even gonna hold y'all. I didn't play no defense. We didn't know where she was gonna go with her answer. I can't remember who asked the question. I would certainly attribute them if I could remember. This was after the game on the last preseason game on Wednesday of last week. She was like, yeah, I didn't play any defense overseas. And she kind of brought it back home, saying that everybody was kind of looking at what she's going to have an opportunity to do and what she can potentially do on the offensive side, but that she feels like she'll be building a boat of her foundation off of what she can do from the defensive side. Because naturally, with her picking up players 90 feet, 94 feet, playing from sideline to sideline, applying pressure ad nauseum on every possession, setting a tone for the defense from the point guard perspective, setting a tone for everything to come from that in terms of scheme and principles and all of that fun stuff. If she's doing her job to the extent that she knows that she can and that she desires to, that's going to play into the offense in and of itself. Because now if this team, who in particular, I talked about the perils to come in the half court for them if they're spending too much time there, if they're able to play in the open floor, Dana's chaos-inducing defense from screen navigation to picking up the ball at the point of attack and navigating screens, and again, just breaking the rhythm of an opponent's offense from the inception of it. If she's able to set that tone as consistently as we saw her do post All-Star break last season, That's going to be something that's going to be a weapon for this team. And again, I think a big thing for this team is going to be establishing their identity first. They're going to be a team that we saw in the preseason is going to go into the regular season that's going to hit first, hit second, hit third, and hit fourth, regardless of if shots are falling, if the spacing is working well, if this, that, and the third is working or not. They are going to hit and they are going to play defense in a connected manner in both realms of everything. And again, at the inception, at the point of attack, at everything that's starting with that is going to be Dana Evans, and upholding that identity and being able to allow for her teammates to pick up the baton and play off of that is a form of leadership in and of itself. And I think that's something that she's going to really key in on this upcoming season. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for her in league-wide recognition with awards and things of that nature that will stem from that.
Yeah, Stephen, can we bring that quote back up for a second? Because I like that what Dana said at the end. Defense is something that she's focused on this year, which is funny because we saw Dana Evans and how she was picking up 94 feet last year. But she said just after this that the team is going to feed off of her defense and picking up 94 feet, and that she has to be the one to start that. That's not from Teresa Weatherspoon, but it is such a Teresa Weatherspoon ideal that the melding of these two is something that I don't see breaking. They'll come under, there's the adversity of the season, right? But what Dana said about being extension of the coach was pretty much already set in stone once she got the job. And it's going to be, just John Hosey said, their defense will need to create offense this year. That's absolutely true. We saw it on display against New York. It was an uneven game at the outset, but the Sky scored the first 9 points before New York got on the board. And that was a Liberty, mind you, if you have forgotten, that was playing their starters. Mm-hmm. They were playing the team that went to the finals last year. Mm-hmm. That is a team that is formidable. They might have been, relaxed a bit because it's preseason, but the Sky got up and into them. And so when we talk about expectations for the season, I've been turning this over for a week now because watching that game throws your expectations so far out of whack because I'm like, man, this team could go like 6 or 7 over 500, or it could just be like, a lot of growing pains for the rookies on the roster. But even then, I look back at last year's roster, they had more rookies last year than they do this year because of the fact that they had to fill so many holes. So Robin Parks was getting her first taste in the W. Taylor Soule was getting her first taste in the W. Morgan Birch was getting her first taste in the W and playing extended minutes. Even Alana Smith, who had an up-and-down career, had not played extended time on a starting or, maximum minute rotation, let's say. So she was getting time that she hadn't necessarily gotten before with a WNBA team. So even as we're in the show, I'm still bouncing around with what this team could look like, what they could do, because there's going to be nights where they won't be able to get into teams as much as they did against New York and lock them down. But there's going to be nights where they're so smothering that other teams are just going to get so out of whack that the Sky are going to be able to run a developing half-court offense.
Yep. And I think that is the biggest connecting. I honestly, when Teresa Weatherspoon was rumored to be one of the 3 coaches that the Sky were looking to court in terms of who they were trying to nail down in their final decision on, she was my choice for a handful of reasons. But I think maybe the biggest one is that connection with point guard and how far that goes. I mean, you look at the aces, Becky Hammond and Chelsea Gray, both played point guard, played it a different way, but they're both very much point guards at heart. And the conversations, the connection that they have is just completely different. You can even look at New York with Sandy Brondello and Courtney Vandersloot. Now, obviously, they're a lot further behind in terms of the chemistry and continuity that the Vegas Aces have, but you can see the connection between point guard and coach. I mean, you can look at the Chicago Sky in particular. James Wade, Courtney Vandersloot, they were quite literally in lockstep like this. They were never not on the same page. And by the same measure, when Emre Vatansever was the assistant coach that was facilitating to the offense in particular, both he and Courtney Vandersloot were also completely in lockstep. So looking at these little connections and how you see how they play out for other teams going forward. That's something that is an advantage in terms of team building and continuity. And for the Sky to have nailed that in the capacity that they did, I think is important. I honestly feel like Teresa Witherspoon sees a lot of herself in Dana Evans, and just that fire, that grit, that desire to win, the leadership,
you got that too.
Wanting to hit first, wanting to lead, like not having to be enticed to do so by somebody else, but just organically wanting to lead. Those little things matter. And I think that is extremely important in the process with everything that they're desiring to do going into the season. And I think they've addressed that in spades just by having that connection. And I would also like to note that I think it was Teresa that brought up when speaking about Dana, that Dana had some sort of an off-court adversity that she did not dive into details on. But she said the fact that Dana came into training camp with the mindset that she did after the conversations they had stemming from, that thing or whatever things that were going on in Dana's personal life, for her to have been so focused and locked in, and for so many other players, Diamond DeShields talking about her first interaction with Teresa Witherspoon, or one of her first interactions, she said Coach prayed for her. Kaiser Gondrzik talking about the levels of connection that they've had in terms of her stemming from her adversity. Kennedy Carter speaking to the adversities that she's seen in terms of finding some staying power and sticking with a WNBA roster, and how Teresa Witherspoon, one of the first players she reached out to for a training camp invitation, was to Kennedy because of the pre-existing relationship they had. Isabel Harrison with the injury, and Teresa Witherspoon infusing so much confidence in her to continue to evolve her game, but just also be herself. And that's the other big thing with Kennedy. Kennedy said, among all of the other things, the fact that she has a coach that embraces her as the person that she is and really puts her forth to make sure that she is consistently being herself, not just Kennedy the basketball player, but Kennedy the person. That's a different type of leadership. And I think being able to resonate, not just with the best player, not just with Angel Reese, not just with Camila Cardozo, not just with Diamond DeShields, not just with Dana Evans, even with the training camp invitees and anybody else that was brought into the roster, to have that individual connection with every single piece, 1 through 14 or 15, however many players they had in training camp. And for everybody to have a unique perspective on their relationship with the coach, mind you, training camp was how many weeks? 2.5, 3?
2.5, yeah.
That's not a lot of time to establish a personal relationship with players. So that means that relationship building started way back when the players were signed. This team is in a great place because of the leadership that Teresa is going to be putting forth on the team. You can see they're ready to run through a brick wall for her through 2 preseason games. And that's only going to pick up more and more steam as continuity builds. And I think that, again, it's going to be a weapon for this team. When they get into adverse moments, they're going to, instead of looking to get their own or looking to go off script or go off the grid, everybody's going to buy in, be on the same accord. And that's going to give them +2, +3, +4 wins on top of the projections that people are giving them in terms of win totals, which is something we'll get to sometime shortly after this. But I think those things are just so important. Having those pillars and the foundation being laid is just so important. And I think it's going to be a weapon for this team going forward.
Most definitely. And we'll talk about more of those expectations as well as some preseason rankings, disrespect for the Sky, expansion talk, and congratulate Breezy Turner on her graduation. But before that, let's talk about my fault. I lost it for a second. Prize picks. That's why I didn't want to talk about it, because I have not been doing too well. But that does not have to be you, because Prize Picks is the number one, not both fantasy sports and sports betting app that you need to check out this season, especially when you're looking at Chicago Sky basketball. If you haven't seen Prize Picks yet, check out the app. It's the best way to play the daily fantasy sports, and it's easy, like I said. For tonight's games, for tomorrow's games, if you want to play games tonight, you can pick whether Caitlin Clark is going to get more or less than 21.5 points. And I believe they might still have the special up, whether you believe Caitlin Clark is going to get more or less than 1.5 points. You pick that, and then you can say, is Asia Wilson going to get more or less than 6 rebounds? And just like that, you have your first Prize Picks bet. You pick 2 squares whether you're going to get over or under, more or less, and that's that. Once again, if you make that first $10 deposit, you receive an instant $10 bonus, and you can make up to 100 times your bets, depending on what squares you pick. Again, that Caitlin Clark that free square is running out very soon, and I believe today might be the last day right before the game starts, so make sure you get that pick in. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country already, including California, Texas, Georgia, and right here in Illinois. And while it's still NBA playoffs, WNBA season is starting, so you want to make sure that you check out the promo tab on Prize Picks as well, because they've got a lot of interesting plays in there, because you can go for averages for the season. Matter of fact, if I can pull mine up here, I got a nice parlay going where $25 will pay $625 if these hit. And so if you, like me, want to play easy daily fantasy sports and make some money back, download the app today. Use that code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. That's use the code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And if you check this one out, I've got my lineup right here, both for the season and for today and for tonight. And now, well, suffice it to say, I've got some interesting ones out there for the season, and I think it's kind of high on Caitlin Clark right now, whether she's going to get more or less than 21 points per game. I would say pick less, but my $25 flex pay for the season got Marina Mabry in there, got our old friend Sluty, got Alyssa Thomas in there for rebounds, and it's a lot of interesting things can do. And like I said, those 6 picks, if they hit, pay $625. So check out that Prize Picks. Also want to shout out CDJR out in Fox Lake, because until the end of this month, they have got you covered for Chrysler, Dodge, Jeeps, and Rams in Fox Lake at Ray CDJR. For a limited time, lease the new 2024 Dodge Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab for only $419 a month. So if you're doing any home repairs, you need to head over to Home Depot, Lowe's, get a lot of stuff that you need to fit in the back of a solid pickup that can tow and carry a lot of supplies in the back. You want to get that 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab by Dodge Ram. Let the amazing team at Ray CDJR help you land the perfect vehicle at the perfect price. And like we always say, whether you're shopping in-store or online, there's no charges, no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, you only have to check out the team at Ray Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, because they're the only team that CHGO Sports recommends. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or raycdjr.com, serving the community since 1963. Ooh, one day, man, we got to get you to read some of those ads, bro.
Let's do it.
You get tired. It gets more tiring than I ever thought it possible. I want to go back to what we were talking about with those rankings, because I think picking the side in, say, the bottom third of the league makes sense. New coach, a lot of roster turnover, going more of a youth movement. That makes sense. But we had a couple of outlets who picked them to finish 12th. ESPN picked them to finish 12th. CBS Sports, I believe, also picked them to finish 12th. And then our hometown Sun-Times, Andy Constable, shout out to her, as always, for the good work she does pick them to finish 11th, along with the New York Times, Sabrina Merchant, that I was kind of surprised about. And striking to me was that WNBA.com picked them to finish 10th in the league, ahead of Los Angeles and Washington. So I'll ask you, are those rankings, if you average them out, say 11, is that warranted based on what you've seen from the roster and what we've talked about with the synchronicity that they have? Or do you expect the Sky to surprise and finish in the playoff places or higher than that?
I preface by saying I've never truly been a fan of power rankings. It just feels very fly by night ish, rather than digging into the weeds and, saying, okay, it's going to be like this, I believe, because of that, or because of this, or because of that, or this. It just feels too fly by night for me at the surface level. So I preface by that. And now that being said, I do feel like with them having so much newness with the team, and there's a level of ambiguity that comes with that, I feel like that it's warranted that, I mean, no one was assuming anybody would have them top 5 or top 6 or even top 7. But I personally feel like because of the bar being so low and Teresa Witherspoon and company mentioning that it's no better place to be than counted out, I think that speaks for itself in terms of what this team's mental approach to, where people are saying they are over the course of the league, where they're at and where they believe they are and where they plan to be when all things are said and done. I'm not going to go outlandish and say they'll be like top 5 or top 6 or even top 7, but I personally would not be surprised if this team finds a way to get into the playoffs. And I think if they're able to optimize the defense and they finish the season top 4, top 3 in defensive rating, that means that they're going to be optimizing, like I said, everything they have with the defensive versatility, the leadership from Dana Evans to Angel Reese, Camila Cardoso finding her way back into the rotation after she comes back from the shoulder injury. All of those little things adding up over time and them consistently nailing rotations to the manner in which we saw them defend arguably the best offense in the league, both in system and in pieces to facilitate to that system in the New York Liberty. Now, granted, yes, it was their first preseason game, but to look that comfortable guarding that offense, it says a lot about where they are. And again, we talked about how condensed training camp is. It's not like they've had 2.5 months to nail these principles, integrate these different things into their rotations and whatnot. They're doing this already. So to see that as a baseline for them to build off of says a lot. And again, if they can finish top 4 or top 3 in defensive rating by the end of this season, I think that's going to be their lane for really starting to find a way to stamp their identity, but also stamp their identity on the league, not just as a team.
That's an important stat to know because there's got to be a nice mix of analytically driven analysis. Sorry, that was kind of redundant. There's got to be a nice mix of referring to the analytics, the statistics of basketball, but also kind of the eye test and how chemistry works, the players fitting together. We've talked at length about the chemistry on this podcast and previously. But if the Sky finished top 3rd in the league in defensive metrics, both in, say, points per game and a stat that a lot of people mentioned, rebounding, which I think is going to be important, making sure that teams only have one possession in their offense is going to be important. Also, three-point shooting, which is somewhere they finished very high last year, but lost Kalia Copper and Courtney Williams, who were 2 of the 3 players who hit the second and third most threes on the team. So I think you have to get that production from Dana. You have to find ways to get that production from your bench in terms of three-point shooting. And you have to look for Marina to really blossom in her second season in the Sky jersey. She came on in the second half of last year, but you're going to need that type of production from Marina all season long if you want to compete, because that's the way you make teams pay, both in half court and in transition with this roster. And we saw the Sky moving into different places. Even you made a note of it with Michaela Onyenwere, where she dropped off in a half court set to give Angel Reese a pass out to the wing side or weak side for an open 3. And Michaela is somebody who can shoot that as well, because spacing on this team is going to be paramount. People have made a note of it with Reese and Cardoso on the floor at the same time. Spacing is going to be very important, especially on the perimeter. But also with Kennedy Carter, who works more in the mid-range and on the run. So those are going to be important. Defensively, how do the Sky stack up in terms of allowing points, allowing possessions, and I think controlling the boards, as well as getting out on the break. If they score top marks in the league in transition points and three-point shooting, then they can surprise. I think if I had to put a very nice set of rose-colored glasses on, I would have them finishing 8th. And I think that would be a pretty good indicator of how well Teresa Witherspoon has done in her first season. Because after the Sky, the Mystics, and the Sparks, you're going to get into the meat of those teams like Dallas, who is going to have some time without Satu Sabally and is also probably going to be a bit affected by that Olympic break as well if Sabali gets healthy, because you know she's going to be playing for her country then. But also Connecticut, who is, I don't think they're going to be necessarily second or third this year, but they're going to be battling it out with a lot of teams in the middle. Seattle, which is ranked highly because of their acquisitions, is probably going to be top 4, you would expect.
I personally think they'll be third in that mix once it's all said and done.
I can't argue against that. You can't put that much talent together on a team with his. I like what I've seen from Noelle Quinn, and I think Jewel having the experience that she did last year, being the player on the team that didn't really have much else, where she not only had to be the focal point on offense but defense as well, made her a lot better, and is going to make her fit better with Skylar Diggins-Smith and Nneka Ogwumike. So that's where I really have the Sky. Probably 8th at best. I don't see them finishing last. I just don't. You know, they might be a lottery team again, which wouldn't be a terrible place to be for next year. But I just think they're a team that's going to be fighting so hard that they're going to get to the playoffs just almost by default.
Yeah, I think that the level of competition from 1 to 12 that this team has compiled, and if you add a proverbial 13 being the head coach, and you could add a proverbial 14 with the general manager, that is such a weapon to have against anybody, because the 40-game regular season can become a little arduous.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a little mundane at times. You can have a week stretch where, I'm not gonna say players are like out of it, but it just kind of gets old for a little bit. But I don't think that's gonna be something that this team runs into process-wise, because there's just a level of urgency and a level of competition as a bar that this team is gonna have, regardless of what combination of players are on the floor, regardless of what the circumstance and situation is. And I think when you have that level of competition stamped within their general identity in terms of style of play and how quickly you want to play, all of that stuff, if you're competing so consistently at that level and your bar is that high, it's hard for teams to match that with just one player, but yet alone an entire rotation of players over the course of a regular season. And then you add injuries and you add context of back-to-backs now being established in the W and things of that nature, schedule-wise. That makes things extremely tough to navigate. But I don't think that's going to be something this team runs into. I think that's going to be something that, when I talked about them hitting first, that level of competition as a bar and that urgency is going to be something that helps them garner wins where in seasons past they might not have gotten wins in certain scenarios just because of not having that requisite level that I'm speaking to. And that's going to be something to watch for going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting season just for that. You have young players who are, had a schedule similar in college, but the 40-game regular season professional schedule, as well as the Olympic break this year, which always kind of makes things, you get extra rest. But once you're on that schedule, expect, and your body starts to expect, like, we're going to have a game this day, the game this day. I want to see how the team reacts to that, because that's going to make it a bit more difficult or I'd say treacherous to navigate. I think that's an easy way to say it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that is an extremely great point.
A couple last hits here. I put a poll out on the team site because I wanted to see what people thought about this first stretch. So first things first, what will the Chicago Sky do out of their first 5 games of the season, where they've got Dallas on the road for 2, then to New York before coming back against Connecticut. Sorry, that's for Dallas on the road for 2. Let's just pull up the tweet, why won't we? Because my memory is not good. They got Dallas on the road for 2, then to New York before coming home against Connecticut and Seattle. And the majority of people went in the middle. Shout out to y'all. Y'all like vanilla ice cream with maybe some cookie crumbles in there. Thought the Sky were going to get 2 to 3 wins out of that first 5-game road trip. And honestly, that's how I feel about it too. I think those 2 wins in Dallas are their best bet. And Connecticut or New York would probably be the third if they get one.
It gets interesting. They have a nice little test in this first pocket of games of the regular season. I think we're gonna quickly kind of learn a lot about this team, where they are, the buy-in level, who can do what, who's worked on what. I think they'll get, you said, of the first 5 games.
Yeah.
The 5-game segment. I think 2 is comfortable. I'll go out on a limb and say 3 because
Hey.
I think they'll finish this first 5 games 3-2. And I think a lot of it is going to come from them already having an identity and then being able to play towards that, naturally stemming from the leadership and fire of the head coach, stemming to the point guard realm, whether that be Dana Evans or Lindsey Allen. Angel Reese being a walking identity with how she plays and how consistently she competes. You can add any other player in the rotation to that. And I also feel like their reserve unit is going to be something that teams have to deal with because Kennedy Carter is going to get a paint touch every possession she touches the basketball. Lindsey Allen is well equipped and well versed in knowing how to find her in those pockets so that she can get downhill, if not getting downhill herself, and being able to cause some chaos and get the defense in rotation from there. I think this team is going to be in a position to really start to make some noise early in the regular season. And naturally, it's going to come with some growing pains as the veteran teams start to transition into their regular season legs and start to build their foundations for what they desire to do this season. But I think this early stretch is going to breed opportunity for the Sky to not necessarily catch teams slipping or catch teams sleeping in any capacity, but to hit them with an uppercut that wakes them up. And that uppercut is going to be rather loud. Might not necessarily be to the extent of a 40-point or 50-point blowout like we saw in the preseason game 2 against the Liberty, but it's going to come in waves where they're going to hit teams with uppercuts and jabs to the midsection that really wakes them up and lets them know, like, hey, you're not just going to walk over us. If you're going to beat us, you are going to have to out-execute us. You might have the talent advantage in certain matchups, but if Marina Mabry goes off for 35 or 40 and knocks down 7 or 8 threes, which we know she's more than capable of, or something like that happens, they can help to neutralize those things. Nonetheless, if a team does have a skill or talent advantage, they're not going to have the advantage in execution. And I think that's something that's going to be big for this team in addition to all of the other intangibles that I spoke to. Not every team is going to be equipped to out-execute them, especially this early in the regular season. And I think that's going to be something that springboards them going forward.
Yeah. In addition to that, we had a cool interaction on Twitter between Isabel Harrison and Breezy Turner, man. I know you caught this one first.
Yeah, it was fun just to see. I talked about multiple times already Isabel Harrison stepping up in leadership just organically. And this is quite literally another example of that. When we see her, something that wasn't publicized, nobody really knew about it, probably outside of the team. And here goes Izzy taking it to Twitter and making sure that people know. Hey, y'all, did y'all know that Breezy Turner just graduated and with a 4.0 while being a professional basketball player? She didn't say that part, but I'm mentioning it. Being a professional basketball player, getting traded in that process, also competing overseas during the overseas stretch of play. That's not normal. And to get a 4.0, and I believe Breezy quoted that tweet and mentioned that she was getting a master's. I can't remember in what particular
social
field it
justice
was.
and human rights.
Yes. So again, something that's very appropriate for the climate that we're living in the Western Hemisphere. Just to see that is amazing. That is amazing. We already talked about how hard it is already being a student athlete in general, but to take that on from being a student athlete to being a professional athlete and a professional athlete in multiple realms. I just gotta clap it up for Breonna Turner because that's special. That's special. And again, it is a little different seeing a Black woman making these type of moves in the spaces that she's in now too. So salute to her and salute again to Isabel Harrison for continuing to exude the levels of leadership that she is with this team.
Yeah, we can't forget that Izzy went through a difficult season last year, getting injured in preseason and rehabbing all year long. And she made a note of talking about that and how it felt, but also what it meant for her to come to this team. She said online, it's like it's only preseason, but I really enjoy playing with this team. And then she mentioned at Media Day that Teresa Weatherspoon different than almost any coach she's had. And she talked about playing for Pat Summitt in college. But she said it was like a breath of fresh air that Teresa Weatherspoon didn't feel like she had to fix anybody. She wanted them to be their most authentic selves. And talking about the chemistry again, that's going to make we see so much of Izzy, but also Breezy, who has been so outspoken when social issues come up and when people start to troll. She's one of the first people who is active in the players union to hit back immediately, and she doesn't care. She's putting her name on it. She's putting her face on it. So that's going to be a very good environment, I think, for all of these players to be in, both coming from the coach and the organization down. So I wanted to put that in there. And last but not least, as we close the show, expansion is on the horizon. It's been on the horizon for years, but it was announced a couple of days ago, first by Shireen Ahmed, that Toronto is going to have an expansion WNBA franchise starting in 2026, which will be headed by Kilmer Sports Group, owned by Larry Tannenbaum. And then today, the Golden State franchise was first introduced by Kaylani in a pretty damn cool video. The Valkyries, owned by Joe Lacob, also owner of the Golden State Warriors, will be kicking off, I believe, the same season, 2026, at the Chase Center in San Francisco. So 2 extra teams coming in, going to be 14 teams. Playoffs going to be expanded soon, and rosters going to be expanded soon, man.
That's right. And I would not be surprised if Kathy Engelbert and company dip into their evolution bag and hopefully find a way to incorporate some sort of a play-in tournament with the W. And that would naturally help to facilitate to these new teams, put them in positions, expand, like we mentioned, the playoffs, and make things a little bit tougher to navigate through in terms of the entire regular season, because things will matter a little bit even more, to be honest. And it's gonna be fun. Expansion is fun. They're going about it at a good pace. They're not rushing it, as you can tell. They're very much detail oriented with what location they're desiring to establish, expand the league with. And I think it's dope that they're getting a team not just north of the border, which is going to come with the energy in and of itself, because that team is going to have literally an entire country rooting for them.
Yeah, for real.
But also establishing something in the Bay Area as well, where those fans up over there love basketball and have been kind of begging for a WNBA franchise for some time now. So to see both of those 2 locations get a team is dope. Expansion is dope. We are in the middle of, or in even the beginning, really, of the evolution of women's basketball as we knew it. It's going to become a spectacle, and, gear up for it, as Coach would say.
Gear up. Yeah, we cannot forget the slogan that Teresa Weatherspoon said when she was introduced all the way back in October. I'll say this. I was out with my cousins who were in their 60s, 70s back in the early spring, and we were watching the Final Four at my cousin Ron's house. And he and his brother were so into the game. They put a bet on it, while Ron's wife was out. Anthony, I hope you don't watch this show. So you don't know what happened. But
dry
they put a bet on.
Dry snitching is insane.
Hey, them boys, that they're old enough. They're old enough to handle that one. But they literally put a bet on the game in the middle of the game. And I won't say who tried to back out, but he knows who he is. But they are excited for a team to come in. I've been talking to them about it for a couple of years now. And they're basketball crazy already. They're Warriors fans for sure, but they're watching these teams. They knew that Kiki Iriafen had changed teams before. They knew about all the different players on the rosters. So they're going to be ready when that team gets going and starts operations in San Francisco, across the entire Bay. It's going to be real fun to see. This has been the CHGO Sky Show, man. Opening night is tomorrow. Again, if you follow along with us, we're going to put the poll out for what you think is going to happen tomorrow. So follow the team at CHGO_Sky. Of course, follow our man, Stephen Garner, at StateUS.3, and check out his work on allchgo.com, including this column from last week, Media Day, about Teresa Weatherspoon coming in as leader of the Sky, which we've already talked about. Stephen, I know this one was a good one because we got some great quotes in Media Day. But what else you got coming out in the hopper?
Yeah, I'll start preface by saying definitely make sure you follow both of us on Twitter. Things are gonna start ramping up, and we'll have a lot of content coming from our individual Twitter accounts. We'll obviously try to pub it as well from the main Sky account, but definitely shoot us those follows, and also shoot me a follow or shoot me a subscription rather on YouTube. My first name Steven, as you see on the screen. Last name Pridgeon, Pridgeon, and then Garner3. I'll be posting a lot of film sessions. I might do one on the Sky's second preseason game. Just kind of diving into the weeds on some things to look forward to as we get into the regular season and things start to count a little bit more. So, be a lot of updates coming from there, as well as the written work on the CHGO website. So, we got a fun season ahead of us. Plenty of fun work to tap in with. That's not even going to seem like work because this team is fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting to it all, especially the in-person dynamic of it all.
Yes, sir. As I said, follow Steven all season long, all year long at StateUS.3. He'll be doing work for CHGO Sky and also those cats over in Phoenix at PHNX Mercury as well. Follow me on Twitter at Quandary Kitten. That's KWANDARY Kitten. And follow CHGO Sports at CHGO_sports on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, and wherever podcasts are sold. And subscribe to us on YouTube as well. For the big man on the wheels, Stephen Nicholas holding us down. This has been the CHGO Sky Show, part of CHGO Sports, a division of the All-City Sports Network. Until next time, folks, be good, do great things, and always keep your head above the clouds.
We all silly like the mayor.